Help me, Dad. The voice crackling through his smartphone was a ghost of his daughter's thin terrified. And then a man's cold laughter in the background. In that single, heart-stopping moment, Jack Callahan's world froze. 3 hours later, standing in the sterile, white silence of a hospital morgue, the cold sheet pulled back to reveal the bruised, lifeless body of his daughter he knew. The man he had buried for 20 years, the ghost he had sworn would never return, had to be resurrected. For 2 decades, he'd been just Jack Callahan, a simple charter boat captain, taking tourists out to see the California coastline. So why in the dead of night did he begin making a series of encrypted calls summoning a scattered team of former U.S. Navy SEALs from the shadows of their new lives? And what dark purpose, what terrible promise was pulling these sleeping warriors back together? If this story finds a place in your heart, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Now let's witness how a father's boundless love and righteous fury forged a new kind of justice. Jack Callahan, at 55, was a man carved from sea salt and quiet grief. He ran a small fishing charter out of Port Blossom, a sleepy coastal town where the biggest news was the tide. After losing his wife years ago, his daughter, Maya, became his entire world, his sun, his moon, and all his stars. At 20 years old, Maya was studying marine biology at a nearby university, her heart as deep and full of life as the ocean she adored. She had her father's quiet strength and her mother's radiant compassion. "Hey, Dad, gonna be late tonight." Her voice over the phone that evening had been bright, full of the usual energy that could calm any storm in his soul. "We've got a big project presentation, gotta nail it down with the team." Even with his hands on the wheel of his boat, the sea serpent, the sound of her voice brought an unconscious smile to his face. "All right, sunshine. Don't you be walking home alone late, you hear me? Don't be stingy with the Uber fare, that's what your old man works for." A soft laugh came through the speaker. "I know, Dad, I love you. Love you more, Maya." That was the last time he heard her sound like herself. 11:30 p.m. Jack got home earlier than usual, a box of Maya's favorite donuts in his hand, but the small house was dark and quiet. An unnatural quiet. Her phone went straight to voicemail. 1 a.m., 2 a.m. The silence in the house grew louder, heavier. Then, at 2:15 in the morning, his phone rang, an unknown number. "Dad," it was a choked whisper, a sound of pure agony. "Help me." The line was filled with static, and then, a man's cruel, mocking laugh, and another's. The donut box slipped from Jack's hand, scattering across the floor. "Maya, Maya, where are you? Talk to me." But the line was dead. He called her friends in a frantic haze. No one knew where she was. Her best friend, Chloe, was sobbing on the phone. She got a weird call. "Jack." She said a friend was in trouble on some yacht, the Odyssey. She just ran out, said she had to help. 4 a.m. Maya was found near the docks of a private, high-end marina. She'd been left on the cold pavement, her body a canvas of bruises and trauma. She was gone long before the first responders arrived. At the county coroner's office, identifying his daughter's body, the world fell out from under Jack Callahan. The vibrant, brilliant young woman he had devoted his life to raising silenced forever at just 20. He couldn't process it. He wouldn't. "Who did this?" he asked the lead detective, his voice a raw, broken thing, his face stained with tears. The detective, a tired man named Miller, gave him a cold, practiced answer. "We're still investigating, Mr. Callahan. These things, they take time." But Jack knew. He knew about that marina. He knew about the luxury yachts that docked there. He knew the whispers around town about the wild parties thrown by the untouchable sons of the rich and powerful. The name of that yacht, the Odyssey, it belonged to the son of a tech billionaire. He'd heard the stories. Days crawled by with no progress. Worse, Detective Miller started shifting his tone. "Look, Mr. Callahan, it's possible your daughter went there willingly. Maybe for money. We see it a lot." In that moment, something inside Jack snapped. 20 years of carefully constructed peace, of being just a boat captain, just a dad, shattered into a million pieces. The eyes that looked back at Detective Miller were not the eyes of a grieving father. They were ancient and cold and held a capacity for violence that Miller couldn't possibly comprehend. "Detective," Jack's voice was low, devoid of all its earlier warmth, a chilling monotone. "My daughter was not that kind of girl." That night, Jack went up to the attic. He pulled out an old, steel-reinforced sea chest he hadn't opened in 2 decades. Inside, beneath a faded Navy flag, was a desert camouflage uniform and a small, tarnished pin, the trident of a U.S. Navy SEAL. Beneath that, a rank insignia, Master Chief Petty Officer. The next morning, Jack was back at the police station. Detective Miller was just as dismissive as before. "Mr. Callahan, I told you, an investigation isn't a TV show. It doesn't get solved in an hour. Be patient." "Did you check the security cameras at the marina, Detective?" Miller hesitated, shifting in his chair. "Yeah, about that. Unfortunate coincidence. The cameras on that entire dock were malfunctioning that night." Jack's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Malfunctioning on that specific night? What a coincidence. What about the cameras from the yacht club across the water? Angles no good, trees in the way. Look, it's gonna take a while." Just then, a man in a $1,000 suit walked into the station, Rolex on his wrist, confident stride. Detective Miller shot up from his chair as if his seat were on fire, his posture instantly deferential. "Mr. Davies, good to see you." "Miller," the lawyer said, his voice smooth and commanding. "How is our situation progressing?" The lawyer, Davies, glanced at Jack with utter disdain before leaning in and whispering to Miller. Jack didn't need to be a SEAL to read the situation. His hearing, honed by years of listening for the faintest sound in hostile territory, picked up fragments. "Keep it quiet, top down, just an accident, unfortunate." A cold dread, colder than the morgue, washed over Jack. It was already happening. The cover-up, the erasure of his daughter's life. And it had only been 2 days. After the lawyer left, Miller's attitude turned from dismissive to hostile. "Listen, Callahan, let's be honest here. Why else would a girl like that be on a yacht like that? It's about money. These college girls, they do this stuff to make quick cash. My daughter would never." Miller scoffed. "Every father says that, but reality is a different story. Look, ruling this an accidental death is the best thing for everyone." "Accidental death?" Jack's voice trembled with rage. "She was covered in bruises. An accidental death. Probably fell. She had alcohol in her system. People get clumsy." And in that moment, Jack understood. Utterly, completely, there would be no justice in this system. Not for him, not for Maya. Truth meant nothing in the face of money and power. Leaving the station, Jack looked up at the sky. It was the same brilliant blue Maya had loved to paint, but now it all looked gray, washed out. "Maya, what do I do? Sunshine. What does your old man do now?" That night, he went to see Maya's friends himself. If the police wouldn't do their job, he would. Maya's best friend, Chloe, told him through her tears, "Jack, Maya was the best of us, the kindest." That night, the call she got, it wasn't for a party. She said someone was going to hurt themselves, that a girl was in trouble, and she had to go talk her down. Jack's heart fractured all over again. His daughter had died trying to save someone. Her own compassion had been used as bait. Chloe continued, her voice trembling, "And Jack, there's more. For the past few weeks, strange men in expensive cars were hanging around campus. They tried to talk to Maya, said they were scouts for a modeling agency, offering her a contract. She was creeped out by it. She was actually thinking of reporting them." The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. A classic, predatory recruitment tactic used by the wealthy elite to find their playthings, but Maya hadn't fallen for it. She'd been lured into their web trying to pull someone else out. Back in his silent house, Jack sat in Maya's room and opened her journal. The last entry was written in her familiar, looping script. "Dad came home late again tonight. I know captaining that boat is hard work. I can't wait to graduate and get a good job so he can finally rest. I want to be a marine biologist who helps save the oceans, and I want to be a kind person who helps people, just like my dad." He couldn't take it anymore. The grief was a physical weight, crushing him. But beneath it something else was stirring, a cold, familiar fire. The memories he had locked away for 20 years began to surface, one by one. At midnight, Jack took out an old, heavily encrypted satellite phone. A ghost phone, with a number he hadn't used in 2 decades. He prayed it was still active. He dialed. A voice on the other end answered, cautious, "Yes?" "Doc, it's Ghost." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, a stunned silence. Then, a voice filled with disbelief and a hint of reverence. Ghost, my God, is it really you, after all this time? I have a situation, Jack said, his voice flat, all emotion stripped away. I need you to rally the boys. What is it, Jackie, what's wrong? They killed my daughter, Doc, and the system is letting them walk. The voice on the other end transformed instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, hard edge. I'm on it, Chief. Give me 12 hours. The team will be assembled. Clicking the phone shut, Jack clutched a picture of Maya, his knuckles white. Maya, Daddy's going to find the truth, he whispered into the empty room. And I swear on your life the men who did this to you are going to pay. Outside, a storm began to roll in off the Pacific, but inside Jack Callahan, a far more dangerous storm, dormant for 20 years, was finally breaking. The next morning, while making arrangements for Maya's funeral, Jack's mind drifted back, pulled by the currents of memory, back to 1999. Then, Master Chief Jack "Ghost" Callahan was the operational leader of SEAL Team 6's most elite unit. His team was a scalpel used for the nation's most sensitive, most dangerous, off-the-books operations. To his men, he wasn't just a commander, he was a legend, an anchor, a father figure. So why did he trade that life for a fishing boat in Port Blossom? The answer was Maya. When his wife, Sarah, died in a car accident shortly after Maya was born, Jack found himself at a crossroads. A decorated future in the Navy, with a certain path to becoming a command master chief for the solitary, all-consuming duty of being a father. You're really getting out, Chief, his second-in-command, Marcus "Doc" Holloway, had asked him, his face a mask of disbelief. You're a shoo-in for the top spot. Jack, holding the tiny, sleeping bundle that was Maya, had looked at his friend with a resolve that nothing could shake. Marcus, she's all I have left. She's my whole country now. He made a promise to himself then, a silent vow to the memory of his wife. This little girl, he would shield her from all the world's pain. He would give her a life of peace, of happiness, of normalcy. At the funeral home, Jack sat before Maya's casket, where a beautiful picture of her smiling, her eyes bright with life, was displayed. The smile he had worked his entire life to protect. I'm sorry, sunshine, he whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. He remembered when she was in first grade, her class had a show and tell for what their parents did for a living. Maya had stood up and proudly announced, my daddy is a boat captain. He's the best daddy in the whole world. He takes people out on the ocean and makes sure they're always safe, even when the waves are big. And he's the warmest daddy in the world. Picking her up from school that day, she had squeezed his hand and said, all my friends were so jealous, Dad. They said you were the coolest. In that moment, Jack had never been more certain of his choice. Being Maya's hero was worth more than any medal the Navy could ever give him. As she grew older, her pride in him only deepened. When her friends' fathers were away on business trips or out playing golf, Jack was always there for dinner. Dad, we had a career counselor at school today. Oh yeah, and what does my brilliant girl want to be? A marine biologist. I want to help save the coral reefs and protect the animals. I want to help things that can't help themselves like you do. His heart had swelled with a quiet pride. His 20 years of simple living hadn't been a waste. This wonderful, compassionate girl was his life's greatest accomplishment. In high school, she began to understand the sacrifices he'd made. Dad, I'm going to get into a great college, graduate fast, and make a lot of money so you can finally retire and relax. Maya, honey, I'm already happy. As long as you're healthy and kind, that's all the reward I need. In college, she became even more thoughtful. She insisted on working a part-time job at the campus library to help with her expenses. When he'd come home, exhausted and smelling of salt and diesel, she'd always have a hot cup of tea waiting for him. How was your day, Dad? Long, but thinking of my girl always makes it better. You make my day better too. Dad, you're my hero. And now that vibrant, loving girl was lying in a cold wooden box. It was a reality his mind refused to accept. Mourners filed through the funeral home, Maya's college friends, neighbors from their quiet street, even some of his regular charter customers. They all spoke of her kindness, her intelligence, her infectious smile. Jack, she was such a good daughter, always talking about you. Mr. Callahan, Maya was the first person to befriend me when I transferred. She helped everyone. But the people who should have been there weren't. No one from the police department. No one from the district attorney's office. No official presence to acknowledge that a life had been stolen. That night, long after the last mourner had left, Jack sat alone with the casket. The doors of the funeral home opened, and a man walked in. Late 40s, solid build, short cropped hair, and the unmistakable posture of a career military man. It was Marcus "Doc" Holloway. 20 years ago, he was Jack's right-hand man. Now, he was a special agent in charge at the FBI's Los Angeles field office. "Chief," he said, his voice heavy, "I came as soon as I heard." Doc had known Maya since she was a baby. He was as close to an uncle as she'd ever had, checking in on them every few years after Jack retired. "Tell me straight, Marcus," Jack said, his voice quiet but intense. "Is there any chance this case gets a real investigation?" Doc hesitated, then shook his head, his expression grim. "Jack, I'm sorry. The pressure from upstairs is immense. You know whose kids we're talking about. A tech titan, a U.S. senator, a federal judge. So my daughter's life means nothing." A cold fury, honed over 2 decades, seeped into Jack's voice. "Chief, I'll do everything I can through official channels, I swear." "Marcus," Jack cut him off, "you remember what we did 20 years ago? You remember the kind of work we did?" Doc's face hardened. He remembered the missions that never made the news, the justice they delivered when the system failed. "Chief, don't tell me you're—" "If the law won't hold these monsters accountable for what they did to my daughter," Jack said, his eyes locking with Doc's, "then I will, the old way." Doc started to protest, but one look into Jack's eyes stopped him. They were the eyes of Ghost Callahan, the commander who never wavered, even in the heart of enemy territory. "I still have the contact tree," Doc said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Secure comms. I can have the whole team assembled in 12 hours. Do it." Jack turned back to Maya's picture, his voice a low, dangerous promise. "For 20 years, Marcus, I was a father, nothing more, but they took that from me. As the father who failed to protect her, and as the soldier who once swore to protect this country from its enemies, it looks like I have one last mission." That night, a series of encrypted calls began to ripple across the country, waking ghosts from their quiet, civilian lives. The day after the funeral, Jack climbed into the dusty attic of his home. He unlocked the old military-grade trunk that had sat untouched for 20 years, a time capsule of a life he'd left behind. A wave of memories hit him as he lifted the lid. His faded camouflage uniform, a case of medals and commendations, and photos of his team from his time as Master Chief of SEAL Team 6. In the photos, he was a different man entirely. Sharp eyes, an aura of command, and a bone-deep confidence that radiated from him. At the very bottom lay a thick, classified file. Operation name, Clean Sweep -1998. It was the last mission his team had undertaken. A massive political scandal was about to break, involving corrupt politicians and corporate lobbyists selling state secrets. But their power and influence had paralyzed every official investigative body. The president had given Jack's team a clandestine order: handle it by any means necessary. In 72 hours, Jack's team had gathered irrefutable evidence, neutralized the threat, and apprehended the key players without a single shot fired in public. The operation was a masterpiece of surgical precision. But it was never made public. The records were buried, sealed for eternity. It was after that mission, swimming in the moral grayness of it all, that Jack had made his choice. He didn't want to live in the shadows anymore. He wanted to be a father, a good, simple father to the daughter who was about to be born. But things were different now. Muttering to himself, he picked up the secure satellite phone. He dialed the first number. "Yeah. Spectre, it's Ghost." A beat of stunned silence. "Chief, holy hell, is that really you?" The voice belonged to Leo Chen. 20 years ago, he was the team's comms and tech genius. Now, he was a multi-millionaire cybersecurity consultant in Silicon Valley. "Leo, I have a situation. Tonight, 10 p.m, the old warehouse, you know the one." "What's going on, Chief?" "They killed my daughter, Leo, and the system won't deliver justice." Leo's voice instantly lost its casual tone. "I'll be there, Chief. Count on it." The second call was to Frank Breacher Gallo. The team's former demolitions expert was now a sought-after civil engineer, managing massive construction projects. "Frank, it's me." "Chief, Long time no hear. Still catching fish?" Frank's voice was as booming as ever, but it quieted immediately when Jack spoke next. "I'm rallying the boys, tonight." "Understood. What happened?" "I'll explain when you get there." Third was Sam Stitch Carter, the former team corpsman. Now, he was a top trauma surgeon at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. "Sam, you know who this is." "Chief, I never thought I'd hear from you on this line. Is everything okay?" "It's time for the team to get back together." "I don't know the reason, Chief, but if you're calling, I'm coming. No questions asked." Fourth was Cody Deadeye Jones, the team sniper. He now ran a private security firm, training elite protection details. "Cody, Chief, it's good to hear your voice. It's been too long. Can you still hit a target from a mile away?" A low chuckle. "Every single day, Chief, every single day." The last call was to David Oracle Bennett, the intelligence specialist. He was now a senior analyst at the National Security Agency. "David, it's Ghost." "Chief, how did you get this number?" "Tonight, we muster. You know the location." "Yes, sir, of course, but Chief, is this about?" "We'll talk there." After making the calls, Jack took a long, deep breath. He could feel it, the dormant senses waking up, the tactical mind sharpening. A predator, asleep for 20 years, was beginning to stir. 9:30 p.m. an abandoned naval warehouse on the outskirts of Port Blossom. It was where they had conducted off-the-books training exercises decades ago. Jack was there first. Then, one by one, they appeared out of the darkness. Doc Holloway arrived first, then Leo Chen, Frank Gallo, Sam Carter, Cody Jones, and finally David Bennett. 20 years had passed, but they still carried themselves with the quiet discipline of elite operators. "Boys," Jack said, his voice imbued with the authority they all remembered. "It's been a long time." Instinctively, every one of them straightened up, falling into a subtle parade rest. It was Doc who spoke first. "Chief, tell us what's happened." Jack pulled out a photo of Maya, her face bright with a beautiful smile. "This is my daughter, Maya. She was murdered last week. A plaything for the sons of the rich and powerful." A wave of shock and anger passed through the men. They had all known Maya as a little girl, had seen her grow up in pictures Doc occasionally shared. "The police are calling it an accident," Jack continued, his voice hard as stone. "The system is burying it. Money and power are covering up the truth." Doc bowed his head slightly. As an FBI agent, he felt the shame of a broken system. "Brothers," Jack said, his eyes scanning each of their faces. "For 20 years, I tried to be a normal man, a father. I can't do that anymore. I'm doing this for my daughter and for every person who might suffer the same fate if these animals aren't stopped." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "If the law won't give us justice, we will deliver it ourselves, just like old times." Silence. The only sound was the wind rattling the old warehouse doors. But in their eyes, the same fire that had forged them into a legendary unit was igniting once more. "Just give the order, Chief," Cody said, his voice firm. "We're with you." One by one, the others nodded in grim agreement. A faint, cold smile touched Jack's lips. The first real smile in what felt like a lifetime. "All right," he said, "then Operation Vengeance is a go." The operational briefing lasted until 2 in the morning. Jack, once again the Master Chief, assigned roles with practiced efficiency. "Leo, you're on digital recon. I want everything. Recovered security footage, cell phone records, social media, financial transactions. I want to know what these bastards had for breakfast." "Give me 48 hours, Chief," Leo said, already tapping away on a ruggedized laptop. "I'll own their entire digital footprint." 20 years in the private sector hadn't dulled his skills, it had made them lethal. "David, you're on intelligence. Use the NSA's resources. I want deep background on every individual involved. Their families, their connections, their weaknesses." "Already have a few names flagged, Chief," David replied, his analyst's mind piecing together the network. "It won't be hard to connect the dots." "Marcus," Jack turned to Doc, "you run interference. Keep the official investigation cold. Misdirect them. Let us know if they get close." Doc nodded grimly. "I'll bury them in so much bureaucratic red tape they won't find their way out for months." The very next day, the operation began. Leo Chen, working from a mobile command center set up in a nondescript van, began his digital assault. "Chief, I got it," he announced after 36 sleepless hours. Bingo! The security footage he had recovered and pieced together was damning. 10:30 p.m. on the night of the incident, 3 luxury cars pull into the private marina. 11 p.m. Maya is seen walking down the dock with another young woman, looking concerned. But the most critical footage was from 3am. Look at this. The video showed 5 young men hastily leaving the yacht, their faces clearly visible in the marina's ambient light. "Got their license plates, too," David added. "All high-end luxury vehicles." The vehicle registrations were a who's who of the corrupt elite. The first car, a custom Ferrari, belonged to Sterling Vance, son of a tech billionaire. The second, a Porsche, to Blake Richardson, son of a U.S. senator. The third, an Aston Martin, to Caleb Thorne, son of a federal judge. Jack's fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. It was them, exactly as he'd suspected. "There's more, Chief," Leo said, his voice tight. "I pulled the cell tower data. The call that lured Maya out, there was a spoofed number, a burner phone. They set up a fake emergency, a friend in distress, to get her there." Jack felt a white-hot rage burn through him. They had weaponized his daughter's kindness. Sam, the autopsy report. Sam Carter, using his credentials as a surgeon, had managed to get a copy of the official report and perform his own, more detailed analysis. His voice was heavy with sorrow and disgust. "Chief, I can't even describe what they did to her. It was brutal, prolonged, it was monstrous. For a man who saw trauma daily in the ER, to be shaken like this meant it was beyond horrific." The rage in Jack's heart crystallized into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. "David, give me everything you have on them," Jack commanded. The files David had compiled were extensive. Sterling Vance, Blake Richardson, Caleb Thorne, and the 2 other men on the yacht were part of a group they called the Golden Circle. They were legacies of wealth and power. Utterly convinced of their own impunity, they've left a trail of victims for years, David explained. At least 7 other young women have been assaulted or harassed. But every time, it was settled with money or silenced with threats. Jack now knew with absolute certainty, sending these men to prison wasn't enough. It wouldn't even be justice, they needed to be broken. "All right, boys," Jack said, his voice a low growl, "let's go hunting." The first target was Sterling Vance, the ringleader. He lived a life of careless debauchery, flitting between exclusive clubs and high-end parties in Los Angeles. "Cody, I want round-the-clock surveillance on Vance. I need to know his patterns, when and where he's most vulnerable." "On it, Chief," Cody replied. After 3 days of shadowing, he had what they needed. He has a routine. Every Tuesday afternoon, he visits a private wellness clinic in Beverly Hills, enters and exits through a VIP underground garage, spends about 2 hours there, alone. Next Tuesday, we make contact. The following Tuesday afternoon, as Sterling Vance walked toward his Lamborghini in the dimly lit private garage, he felt a sudden chill, a sense that he was being watched. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice echoing in the concrete space. A man stepped out of the shadows. He looked ordinary, maybe in his 50s, dressed in the simple clothes of a working man. It was Jack. "Sterling Vance?" "Yeah, who are you? How'd you get in here? Does the name Jack Callahan mean anything to you?" The color drained from Sterling's face. He thought this was over, buried, paid for. How could this man possibly know? "What are you talking about? I don't know anyone by that name." "Don't lie to me." Jack held up a tablet. On the screen was the crystal clear, recovered security footage of Sterling and his friends leaving the yacht. Sterling was speechless. Where did you get that?" "Maya was my daughter." Jack's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of an ocean of grief and rage. "I know what you did to her, and now you're going to pay the price." "Hey, look, man, there's been a misunderstanding. It was just a party." Jack took a step closer. "Is this a misunderstanding, too?" He swiped the screen, showing a summary of Sam's autopsy report. The clinical, brutal details made Sterling physically recoil. We were just having fun. We didn't mean to kill her." "Fun?" The word dripped with venom. Jack's eyes were blazing. "You had fun with my daughter's life." Sterling finally understood. This wasn't some grieving father looking for a payout. This was something else, something far more dangerous. "What do you want?" he stammered. "Money." "I can give you money, whatever you want." A cold, mirthless smile crossed Jack's face. "You people always think money can fix everything." "Not this time." He leaned in, his voice a whisper that was louder than a shout. "I'm giving you 48 hours. You and your friends walk into the nearest police station and confess to everything. If you don't, I will come for you. And I promise you what you did to my daughter will feel like a day at the beach compared to what I will do to you." Sterling was trembling, paralyzed with fear. He saw something in this man's eyes that was far beyond simple anger. It was the absolute certainty of his own destruction. "Remember," Jack said, his voice a final, chilling note, 48 hours. Then he turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving Sterling Vance alone with his terror. The 48 hours came and went. Sterling Vance and his friends did not turn themselves in. Instead, they did what they always did. They called their powerful fathers and unleashed the system against the man who dared to threaten them. The next morning, two black sedans and a local police cruiser were parked in front of Jack's house. Men in dark suits were waiting for him. "Jack Callahan, FBI, we need you to come with us." "On what charge?" "You're wanted for questioning in connection with extortion and making terrorist threats against Mr. Sterling Vance." Jack just smirked. He had expected it. This was their playbook. At the FBI field office, Jack sat across from a young, ambitious agent. He had the arrogant posture of someone who knew the game was rigged in his favor. "Mr. Callahan, we have a sworn statement from Mr. Vance. He claims you threatened his life." "I told the man who murdered my daughter to confess his crime. Is that a threat?" "You have no proof of this murder. You illegally obtained that footage and used it to harass an innocent citizen." "Innocent?" Jack's voice was laced with disbelief. "There is video evidence. There are phone records. Inadmissible in court, Mr. Callahan. Illegally obtained. A fruit of the poisonous tree, as they say." In that moment, Jack saw the system not just as flawed, but as a weapon, specifically designed to protect the powerful. The rules didn't apply to them. "Callahan, I'm giving you a warning. Stay away from Sterling Vance and his associates. Go back to your fishing boat and be quiet. It's the best thing for everyone." The agent's words were a clear threat. But Jack simply smiled a thin, cold smile. "Agent, let me ask you something. That new house you just bought in Malibu a little outside an agent's pay grade, isn't it? Especially when paid for by a shell corporation owned by Vance's father." The agent's face went pale. What are you talking about?" "And that gambling debt you have in Vegas, it was a nasty one. Good thing a friend paid it off for you last month." The agent was completely stunned. How could this fisherman know these things? Who are you?" he stammered. Jack stood up, towering over the terrified agent. "I'm just a father who lost his daughter," he said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "But I'm about to become a whole lot more." That night, Jack met with his team in the warehouse again. The mood was different. The time for subtlety was over. "Chief, it's time to take the gloves off," Doc said, his face set in stone. As a man of the law, he was disgusted by its perversion. "We go back to the old way," Jack declared. There were no objections. The world of Sterling Vance and his friends began to unravel with terrifying speed. First, Sterling himself. He was at an exclusive club in Hollywood when his phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "Sterling, outside, now?" He went outside to see a black, unmarked cargo van parked at the curb. A man inside beckoned him over. "Who are you?" Sterling asked, approaching cautiously. The side door slid open. Inside sat Jack Callahan. But he wasn't the man from the garage. Dressed in tactical gear, flanked by other stone-faced men, he radiated an aura of absolute command. "You had your 48 hours, Jack said, his voice like cracking ice. "Now, we do things my way." Before Sterling could react, men materialized from the shadows around him. His bodyguards were neutralized and disarmed in seconds with brutal, silent efficiency. They were Jack's team. No longer engineers or doctors, they were operators again. "Who are these guys?" Sterling panicked. Their movements were too precise, too professional. They moved like wolves. "Let me introduce myself properly," Jack said. "I am Master Chief Jack Callahan, retired, U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6. Sterling's blood ran cold. He'd heard stories from his father about those men. The ghosts, the boogeymen the powerful whispered about. "And these," Jack gestured to the men around him, "are my brothers. Currently, They are an FBI special agent in charge, an NSA senior analyst, a world-renowned surgeon, and some of the best private security and tech minds on the planet. The horrifying truth dawned on Sterling. He hadn't messed with a fisherman. He had kicked a hornet's nest of the most dangerous men in the country. "We're going to give you a taste," Jack said, his eyes empty of all mercy. "A little taste of the fear and helplessness you made my daughter feel." From that day forward, Sterling Vance's life became a living hell. He woke up to find his bank accounts frozen, flagged by the Treasury Department for suspicious international transfers. A file David had expertly fabricated and planted. His prized Lamborghini was found at the bottom of the Santa Monica Pier, a neat piece of work by Frank. His personal photos, emails, and a record of all his sordid activities were leaked online, an anonymous data dump courtesy of Leo. Every VIP hospital and clinic in the state suddenly refused to see him, their networks mysteriously crashing whenever his name was entered. A small favor from Sam. And everywhere he went, he felt watched. Cody was always there, just out of sight, a silent, ever-present predator. The legal pressure was suffocating. Old assault cases that had been buried were suddenly reopened by the DA's office, supplied with a mountain of new, anonymous evidence, all curated by Doc. The IRS launched a full-scale audit of his family's finances. Within a week, Sterling Vance was a broken man. His money, power, and connections had evaporated. Finally, Jack appeared before him again. "Do you understand now?" Jack asked. "Do you have any idea what my daughter felt like?" Sterling was a shell of his former self, his arrogance replaced by pure, animal terror. "Please stop. I'll do anything. I'm sorry." "Sorry? Then tell me the truth. Tell me exactly what happened to my daughter." With nothing left to lose, Sterling Vance confessed everything. The story that spilled out of him was even more depraved than Jack had imagined. It was a game for us," he sobbed. "We liked breaking them, the innocent ones." Jack listened, his face an unreadable mask of stone. "But Maya, she was different. She didn't scare. She didn't care about the money. She fought back. She told us she was going to call the police and her father." Sterling looked up, his eyes wide with a new kind of fear. "We just laughed. We thought, what's her father going to do? He's just some fisherman." He confessed how Maya had fought, how she had stood up to them, how she had never once begged. Her defiance had enraged them. Their sick game had turned into a frenzy of violence. Sterling's confession was a nightmare, but Jack made himself listen to every single word. He had to know what his daughter had endured in her final moments. She was brave," Sterling whispered, choking on his own words. "She never broke, not until the very end." He described how Maya, in her last moments of defiance, had tried to call him. She said, my dad won't let you get away with this." Jack's heart was a knot of pride and soul-crushing agony. His daughter had died fighting, believing in him. The confession was recorded, every word captured, but Jack wasn't finished. "Where are the others?" "They ran," Sterling whimpered. "Blake went to Europe. Caleb went to South America. They're all hiding." Jack looked out towards the horizon, his gaze distant and cold. "They can run," he said softly, "but there's nowhere on this earth they can hide." The hunt went global. Blake Richardson, the senator's son, had fled to a private villa in Monaco. But a week later, French authorities, acting on an Interpol red notice flagged by Doc's contacts for international human trafficking, raided the villa and arrested him. Caleb Thorne, the judge's son, was hiding out in a remote compound in Brazil. He suffered a mysterious accident involving a faulty gas line in his remote hideout. He survived, but with severe injuries that would keep him bedridden for a year. Coincidentally, Frank Gallo had just consulted on a project in Brazil. One by one, the others were located and neutralized, their safe havens turning into cages. The global network of former special operators that Jack and his team could call upon was vast and loyal. Within a month, all 5 men were back on U.S. soil, in custody. But just as things seemed to be wrapping up, Jack felt a nagging sense of unease. It was too easy. The fathers of these boys were too powerful to be dismantled this simply. "David," Jack said during a late-night meeting, "dig deeper. There's something we're missing. A bigger picture." 2 days later, David returned, his face pale. "Chief, it's worse than we thought. Much worse." What he had uncovered was chilling. The Golden Circle was just the bottom rung of a much larger, more insidious organization. A shadow network of politicians, billionaires, judges, and media moguls who called themselves the Meridian Group. They're a cabal, David explained, pointing to a complex web of connections on a screen. They trade favors, bury each other's crimes, manipulate markets, and control policy from behind the scenes. They're the real power. And Maya. She wasn't just a random target, Chief. The girl she went to the yacht to help was a former victim of the Meridian Group's inner circle. Maya stumbled onto something much bigger. They didn't just want to silence her, they wanted to make an example of her. Now it all made sense. The immediate, high-level cover-up. The sheer arrogance of the perpetrators. They weren't just spoiled rich kids. They were protected assets of a shadow government. How big is this network? We've identified key players, over 50 of them. Senators, CEOs, federal judges. It's a cancer at the heart of the system. Chief, what do we do? Doc asked. This is too big to fight head-on. But Jack saw it clearly. This was no longer just about Maya. It was about everything she represented. It was about a nation rotting from the inside. He made a decision. Brothers, he said, his voice ringing with a newfound purpose, we're launching one last operation. What's the objective? A full system flush. We're not just taking down the trigger pullers. We're taking down the whole damn machine. We call it Operation Sundown. But Jack's plan wasn't about violence. It was about something far more elegant and devastating. Leo, he commanded, I want you to hack every single member of the Meridian Group. I want their financial records, their encrypted emails, their secret ledgers, everything. Doc, I want you to prepare legal frameworks. Once we have the evidence, I want to know every single charge that can be brought against them. David, find us the most fearless, untouchable investigative journalists in the country. The ones who can't be bought or intimidated. The plan was simple and brilliant. They wouldn't be vigilantes. They would be the instruments of pure, unadulterated truth. 2 weeks later, the storm broke. Dubbed the Sundown Files by the media, it was the single largest data leak in American history. The meticulously organized evidence, anonymously delivered to a handful of trusted news outlets, exposed the breathtaking corruption of the Meridian Group. The tax evasion, the bribery, the obstruction of justice, the insider trading, and at the very center of the web, the story of a young woman named Jack Callahan, whose murder was the thread that unraveled it all. The nation was thrown into turmoil. Sterling Vance and his 4 friends were sentenced to life in prison without parole. But the real victory was the domino effect. Sterling's billionaire father was arrested for a litany of financial crimes. Senator Richardson was forced to resign in disgrace before being indicted for corruption. Judge Thorne was impeached and arrested for obstruction of justice. In total, over 50 of the nation's most powerful men were brought down, their careers and reputations shattered by the undeniable light of truth. It all happened in less than 2 months. The quiet, surgical precision of SEAL Team 6 had been turned against the nation's internal enemies. Months later, Jack stood before Maya's grave, a small, simple headstone overlooking the Pacific Ocean. We did it, sunshine, he whispered, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. We got them. Not just the monsters who hurt you, but the whole rotten system that created them. For the first time since her death, he allowed himself to cry freely, a wave of grief and relief washing over him. A single cherry blossom petal, carried on the wind from a nearby tree, landed softly on his shoulder. It was as if Maya was telling him, "You did good, Dad." 6 months after the Sundown Files leak, American society was still reeling, but in a good way. A sense of hope, a belief that justice was possible, had begun to return. And Jack Callahan was back on his boat, captaining the Sea Serpent. He was a fisherman again, but something was different. Tucked into the corner of his dashboard was a small, smiling picture of Maya. One afternoon, a young college student chartered his boat. She looked troubled, her eyes red from crying. "Everything okay?" Jack asked gently. "It's just this world feels so unfair sometimes," she said, her voice small. "My boss at my part-time job, he won't leave me alone, but he's a powerful man in this town. If I report him, nobody will believe me. The weak always lose." Jack cut the engine, letting the boat drift on the calm sea. He turned to her. "Don't you ever believe that," he said, his voice firm but kind. "Justice is still out there. You just have to know where to look. He paused, glancing at Maya's picture. Let me tell you a story about my daughter. He told her everything, about a father's love, about a team of forgotten warriors, and about how the courage of one young woman brought an empire of corruption to its knees. Did that really happen? The student asked, her eyes wide with awe. It did, Jack said, and because of my daughter, it's still happening. He handed her a small business card. It read, Maya's Light Foundation. Call this number, he said. It's a group that helps people in situations exactly like yours. They'll protect you. They'll fight for you. After the student left the boat, her face filled with a renewed sense of hope. Jack whispered to himself, I get it now. Maya, I finally get what you were trying to do. There was one last piece of the puzzle Jack had discovered, a final secret hidden in Maya's journal that he hadn't found until after everything was over. Tucked into a hidden pocket was another entry. I met a girl at school today. She was crying. She told me what happened to her, what those rich men on the yacht did to her. She went to the police, but they didn't help. They tried to pay her off to be quiet. I promised her I would help her. Dad always taught me that you have to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. That's what being strong is really about. Maya had known. She knew about the Golden Circle. She knew about their victims. She wasn't lured into a trap by accident. She had walked into the lion's den on purpose, trying to save someone else. Her friend Chloe had confirmed it later. The last thing Maya said to me before she ran out was, Chloe, no matter what happens, I'm not going to let these monsters win. My dad taught me to be brave. Maya was never a victim. She was a soldier. That's when Jack knew what he had to do. The billions of dollars seized from the Meridian Group's illegal assets were, by a strange twist of legal fate, put into a victims' compensation fund. With some expert guidance from Doc and the team, that fund became the endowment for Maya's Light Foundation. It was an organization dedicated to providing legal, financial, and psychological support to victims of crimes committed by the rich and powerful. Jack was the chairman. His team, the former SEALs, were its board of directors. Doc oversaw legal strategy. Sam managed medical and psychological care. Leo ran their impenetrable cyber security. They were still a team, but their mission had changed. They were guardians now. In its first 6 months, the foundation helped over 200 people find justice. A year later, on the anniversary of Maya's death, Jack and his team stood at her grave. They weren't alone. With them were dozens of people whose lives had been saved by the foundation built in her name. Your dream is coming true, sunshine, Jack said, looking at the crowd. Little by little, no one has to fight alone anymore. We're all in this together. The young woman from the boat stepped forward. She was the first person Maya had tried to save. Maya, she said, placing a flower on the grave. I'm so sorry that trying to help me led you to this. But because of you, because of your courage, the rest of us can finally live without fear. Thank you. Jack finally understood. Maya's death wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Her sacrifice hadn't been in vain, it had become a seed from which a forest of hope was now growing. Back home that night, Jack found one last letter from Maya he had never seen, tucked away at the bottom of her childhood memory box. To my hero, Dad. If you're reading this, it probably means something bad happened to me. Please don't be sad, Dad. I lived the way you taught me to. I tried to help people who were hurting. I tried to stand up to the things that were wrong. You always told me that real courage isn't about being strong. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. It's about protecting those who need it most. I tried to have that kind of courage, Dad. If something did happen, please don't seek revenge. That's not who you are. Instead, help make sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. That's the real mission. That's the legacy of a true hero. I love you more than the whole ocean, Dad, and I was so proud to be your daughter. Love forever, Maya. Jack held the letter to his chest and wept, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of profound, overwhelming pride. You were the hero all along, Maya, he whispered. You were always so much braver than your old man. That night, Jack took the sea serpent out onto the dark, quiet water, the lights of the shore twinkling in the distance. He was just a fisherman again, a father. But now, he was also the keeper of his daughter's light, a quiet warrior, helping to change the world, one life at a time. He looked at her smiling picture, his heart full. Thank you, sunshine, for showing me what it truly means to live. This part of Jack and Maya's story may be over, but the real story is the one that continues in all of us. When you see injustice, when you see someone in need, what do? Do you look away, or do you become a light in the darkness, no matter how small? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if this story moved you, please share it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. Thank you for watching.